The 10th Plate, Part 1. My name is Brittany Cole. I'm 32 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse at Dornbecker Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon. And on the night of my 10th wedding anniversary, I brought a stranger to dinner. The private room at Arden smelled like rosemary and melted butter. 10 chairs around a long table, candles, low napkins folded into little birds that nobody asked for. My husband sat across from me, one arm draped over the back of his chair, laughing at something Tyler said. Garrett always laughed with his whole face. That was the trick. You saw those teeth, those crinkled eyes, and you believed every word that came after. Sienna Marsh sat at the far end of the table. Garrett had introduced her as Logan's wife. Said Logan had a client dinner, so she came solo. Casual. Easy. Like she belonged. She wore a silk blouse and a thin silver bracelet on her left wrist that caught the candlelight every time she reached for her wine. I knew what that bracelet cost. $1,200. Markham Jewelers, December 14th. I knew because it showed up on our joint credit card statement. I never received it. The chair next to me was empty. My +1 was late. Garrett leaned forward, winked at Amber. Can you believe it, 10 years with this woman? I'd say I don't deserve her, but that's too easy. He lifted his glass. To Brittany, the one who keeps everything running. Everyone raised their glasses. Sienna raised hers. I raised mine. The door opened. Logan Marsh walked in. Thin, dark glasses, corduroy jacket. His hands were in his pockets and his face had the look of someone who hadn't slept in 3 weeks, which was about right because that's how long he'd known. Garrett looked up. The laugh was still on his face. Logan. Hey, buddy. Thought you had the Henderson thing. He glanced at me. Britt, you didn't tell me you invited? I did. Garrett blinked. Then the grin widened, the one he used at parties, at networking events, at every room he wanted to own. He turned to the table, loud whispered, palms up. So my wife brought a date to our anniversary. Should I be worried? Laughter. Light. The kind that isn't sure of itself. Logan pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat down. He didn't smile. He didn't shake hands. His eyes moved down the table, past the candles, past the folded napkin birds, and found Sienna. She stopped. The fork in her hand hovered over her plate. I turned to her. I kept my voice steady, the same voice I use when I explain a procedure to a parent who's about to fall apart. Relax. He's just here to meet his wife's boyfriend. The room went quiet. Not the polite kind. The kind where you can hear candle wax dripping. Logan spoke. Flat. Even. Like he was reading a quarterly report. I reviewed the company credit card, Garrett. I'd like to discuss a few charges. Starting with the apartment on Hawthorne. The one with both your names on the lease. The fork slipped from Sienna's fingers and hit the plate. A bright, thin sound. Porcelain and metal. That sound will stay with me longer than any of it. Longer than Garrett's face going slack. Longer than Tyler pushing his chair back 2 inches without knowing he was doing it. I sat there and watched my husband's mask die. There's a micro moment before people lie, before they rearrange their face into something usable. A flash of the real thing underneath. I saw it. After 10 years, I finally saw Garrett Cole with nothing on. I'd planned this for 21 days. I thought I'd feel satisfaction. Maybe triumph. Something bright and clean and earned. What I felt was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that 10 years of folding someone else's laundry puts in your hands and won't come out. 3 weeks earlier, I was still the best wife Garrett Cole didn't deserve. Wednesday, 11:20 at night. 12-hour shift behind me. Lily asleep in her room. She was 7 and she'd eaten cereal for dinner again because Garrett had promised to cook and then didn't. Garrett was on the couch playoff game playing to nobody, mouth open, one sock on. I sat on the laundry room floor sorting darks. Granola bar in one hand, his flannel shirt in the other. This was dinner. This was my night. The washing machine churned beside me, warm against my shoulder. The only thing in the house that kept the same rhythm it promised. The fluorescent bulb above me had been flickering since March. Garrett said he'd fix it. Garrett said a lot of things. I brought the flannel to my face to check for stains and caught it. A smell that didn't belong. Not Garrett's cologne. Not my shampoo. Something sweeter, thicker. Vanilla and musk. The kind of perfume that costs more than my grocery budget. My hands kept working while my brain started sorting. The flannel was yesterday's. Garrett wore it to a client meeting in the Pearl District, came home at 11. But the parking receipt in the breast pocket said Hawthorne. That's the opposite direction. I should have woken him. I should have walked into the living room, held up the receipt and asked. But I knew what would happen. He'd say it was nothing. He'd say I was tired, that 12-hour shifts made me paranoid, that he grabbed coffee on the way home. And I would believe him. Because I always believed him. Because 10 years of believing him was easier than 1 second of not. I opened the banking app on my phone instead. Searched Hawthorne. 14 charges in 8 months. Parking a Thai restaurant, a coffee shop, all on the same block. No client of Garrett's worked on Hawthorne. Then I saw it. Markham Jewelers. $1,200. December 14th. I remembered December. Garrett gave me a card and a new pair of slippers. The slippers were from Target. $1,200 did not go to slippers. I sat on that cold linoleum floor and looked at the screen, and the fluorescent light buzzed and flickered overhead, and the washing machine hummed through its spin cycle round and round and round, and I understood that I had known for a long time. I just hadn't given myself permission to look. I didn't cry. Something in my training, maybe. When a kid codes on your table, you don't cry. You count compressions. You check the clock. You act. I photographed the receipt. I screenshotted the bank statement. I put the flannel back in the basket, folded it along the creases I'd been folding for 10 years, and finished the load. Garrett's snoring carried down the hallway. Steady. Even. The breathing of a man who sleeps well because he's never questioned whether he deserves to. That Saturday, Garrett asked me to make a slideshow for the anniversary dinner. Pictures of us, pictures of Lily, 10 years of memories. He wanted me to build a monument to our marriage, and I said sure because that's what I did. I said sure. I opened the laptop on the kitchen table. Garrett had used it that morning and left his email open. A draft. Not sent. To a man named David Keene. The subject line read, "Separation Timeline Confidential." I read it standing up. My coffee was on the counter, still warm. Sunlight through the window. Birds outside. All of it so ordinary, it made me sick. Garrett wanted a separation timeline. Custody projections for Lily. Asset division in an Oregon dissolution. He used the word dissolution, not divorce. Like the clinical term made it smaller. Like dissolving a marriage was just chemistry. One line hit harder than the rest. He'd written, "I'd like to discuss initiating the conversation at a planned family event to minimize drama and ensure witnesses to her reaction." Witnesses to her reaction. He wanted me to break down at our anniversary dinner. He wanted Tyler and Jordan and Amber to see me lose control so later when custody got ugly he could point to that night and say, "You saw her. She's unstable." He wasn't just leaving me. He was building a case. Every piece arranged, every exit planned, every smile at that dinner table, a stalling tactic, while his lawyer drafted the paperwork. But there was more. Further down in the email chain, a single line about Sienna. He called her my partner's wife. Said she was expecting. Expecting. I read that word 3 times. My stomach understood it before my eyes finished. Sienna Marsh was pregnant, and I didn't need to ask whose it was, because the parking receipts, and the vanilla perfume, and the $1,200 bracelet had already written the answer across every charge on our joint credit card statement. I closed the laptop. I washed my coffee mug. I wiped the counter. Then I sat down on a kitchen chair back, straight hands, flat on the table, and for the first time in 10 years, I did not cry. I called my sister. Darla picked up on the second ring. She lived in Boise, worked as a dental hygienist, had 2 boys and a divorce behind her. 3 years ago, her husband left. I drove 12 hours to be there. I held her sons while she packed boxes. I paid her electric bill for 4 months. Darla owed me nothing and would give me everything, and when I said I need you to come to Portland, she didn't ask why. She asked when. I told her about the email. About Sienna. About the bracelet and the receipts and the apartment on Hawthorne that I hadn't seen but already knew existed. Darla listened. She didn't gasp or curse or say she was sorry. She was quiet for 10 seconds. I counted. Then she said, "You've got 2 choices. Walk out now, or walk out later, louder, and with everything you're owed." I told her about the anniversary dinner, how Garrett was planning to use it against me, how he wanted witnesses to my breakdown. "What if I use it instead?" I said. "What if his stage becomes mine?" "Then you need to know." Wife of Logan Marsh, Garrett's business partner, co-founder of Cole and Marsh Marketing. I'd been looking at her Instagram for 2 days. Pottery, brunch photos, a flat stomach that wouldn't be flat much longer, and Logan. Logan, who was sitting in his office right now, running a company with the man who was sleeping with his wife. Logan, who went home to Sienna every night and didn't know that the baby she was carrying might not be his. Logan, who was my husband's business partner and best friend and the last person on earth, Garrett would expect to walk through that dining room door. "I'm not calling him," I told Darla. "Not yet. I need more." "How long do you have?" I counted the days to the dinner. 19. A pause. I heard her boys yelling in the background, the sound of a house that kept moving even when your life stopped. Then I'm booking a flight. I sat in the parking lot of Becker the next Monday morning, 6:30, the sun not up yet, coffee going cold in the cup holder. My phone showed Logan Marsh's contact pulled from the Cole and Marsh website, a business line. I'd typed and deleted the first message 4 times. 19 days. Enough to build a plan. Not enough to change my mind. The 10th plate part 2. I didn't call Logan from the parking lot. I couldn't do it with the hospital in front of me, and a 12-hour shift starting in 20 minutes. I needed ground under my feet, open air, and no one within earshot. Thursday. Lunch break. 12 days before the dinner. I drove to Selwood Riverfront Park and sat on a bench facing the Willamette. The river was gray and slow. September in Portland, the last warm days bleeding out before the rain moved in for good. I held a coffee I wasn't drinking and dialed the number. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Cole and Marsh Marketing, this is Logan. Professional. Clipped. A man who answered 100 calls a day. This is Brittany Cole, Garrett's wife. Hey, Brittany. His voice shifted to warm the way people talk to their partner's spouse at barbecues. Everything. Okay, Garrett's in a meeting, but I'm not calling about Garrett. I watched a jogger pass on the path. A woman with a stroller behind her. Normal people living a Thursday. I'm calling about Sienna. The warmth disappeared. Not slowly, like someone pulling a plug. What about Sienna? Your wife has been sleeping with my husband for 3 years. I have bank statements, parking receipts, and a credit card trail that puts them in the same apartment on Hawthorne 2 to 3 times a week. I don't know what I expected. Shouting maybe. Denial. A man defending his wife, defending his friend, telling me I was wrong or confused or cruel. That's what Garrett would have done. Garrett would have talked for 20 minutes and made me feel like I owed him an apology for asking. Logan said nothing. I listened to him breathe. In and out. Steady. The breathing of a man who was rearranging everything he knew. Then quiet flat. Send me what you have. No tears. No cursing. No are you sure. Logan knew. Some part of him had already known the way I'd known about the flannel shirt, the way you know about the leak in the ceiling before the stain appears. You see the paint buckle. You tell yourself it's nothing. And then one day, someone hands you a photograph of the flood. I sent the screenshots, bank statements, the Hawthorne parking receipts, the Markham Jewelers charge. He went silent for 6 minutes. I counted on my phone's clock, watching the seconds while a barge moved downriver, and 2 crows fought over something in the grass. There's more, he said. Give me 48 hours. I have access to the company credit card. That was the moment it changed. Logan wasn't just a husband with a broken marriage. He was co-founder of Cole and Marsh. He had keys to every filing cabinet, every shared drive, every expense report Garrett had ever submitted. If Garrett used company money on Sienna, Logan could trace it to the cent. The anniversary dinner is in 12 days, I said. I have a plan. Are you in 12 days? A pause. I'll have a spreadsheet by Tuesday. I hung up and sat on that bench until my coffee was cold and my lunch break was over. The river kept moving. I thought about Logan's voice. How even it was. How careful. Like a man stepping across a floor he'd just discovered was glass. Darla arrived Friday night with a carry-on and a look that said she'd already mapped out my next month. She checked into a Courtyard Marriott off McLaughlin, and by Saturday morning, the room looked like a crime scene in reverse. Sticky notes on the wall. Timeline drawn in blue marker on hotel stationery taped together end to end. My laptop open on the desk. Logan's emails coming in every few hours. The numbers were worse than I'd imagined. Logan had gone through 3 years of Cole and Marsh expense reports line by line. What he found, $34,000 charged to client entertainment at restaurants where no client meeting had ever been logged. An apartment on Southeast Hawthorne lease, signed by Garrett Cole and Sienna Marsh, $1,800 a month, paid through the business account, and tagged as a satellite office space. Weekend trips to Bend and Cannon Beach, billed as conference travel, $127,000. 3 years. Our company. Our money. Because Cole and Marsh was built on a loan that I co-signed. My name was on the original paperwork. My credit made that company possible. And Garrett had been funneling our revenue into an apartment where he slept with his partner's wife. Darla stood in front of the timeline, arms crossed, reading the sticky notes. She'd arranged them by date. Yellow for financial, pink for locations, blue for communication patterns. She looked like a dental hygienist planning a root canal, which in a way she was. This is enough, she said. More than enough. It's not. I was sitting on the bed, Logan's latest email open on my phone. He'd found something else. A Google Photos album shared between him and Garrett for company events, marketing shoots, office parties, client dinners. And in the album from a retreat in Bend 3 years ago, one photograph that Garrett forgot to delete. A group dinner, Garrett and Sienna side by side, her hand on his thigh under the table, shot by a random coworker who didn't know what they were capturing. 3 years. Not 6 months. Not a year. 3 years of Wednesday nights and business trips and parking garages and a lease with both their names. I want him to dig his own grave first, I told Darla. I want him to joke. I want him to toast our marriage and call me the love of his life in front of 8 people. And then I want Logan to sit down and read the spreadsheet out loud. Darla looked at me. She had a way of looking that reminded me of our dad. Quiet level taking your measure? And what about after, she said. After what? After the dinner. After the spreadsheet. After everyone at that table knows. What's your plan for the morning? I didn't have one. I had the dinner. That was as far as I'd built. You need a lawyer, she said. Before the dinner, not after. She was right. But the lawyer could wait until Monday. I had a seating chart to finish. By Wednesday, 8 days out, the plan was tight. Logan would arrive at 7:45. 15 minutes after everyone sat down. Enough time for Garrett to get comfortable to pour wine to perform. Sienna was already on the guest list because Garrett had invited her himself. Told me Logan had a client commitment. 3 couples as witnesses. Tyler and Jordan, Amber and Sean, Ian and Priya. I arranged the chairs so Logan's empty seat would be next to mine, directly across from Garrett. When he walked in, Garrett would see him first. The seating chart looked like a chessboard, every piece placed, every move mapped. I ran through the sequence in my head a dozen times, standing in my bathroom, whispering the lines to my reflection. He's just here to meet his wife's boyfriend. I said it until the words stopped shaking. Until my voice came out the way it did at work, when a kid was coding, and I had 4 seconds to explain the next step to a resident who looked like he might pass out. Logan called Wednesday evening. The spreadsheet was done. 127,000 itemized. Every receipt. Every charge. Every lie with a dollar amount beside it. Are you okay? I asked, which was a stupid question. But he'd been living with Sienna for the past 12 days, knowing what he knew. Eating dinner across from her, sleeping in the same bed, watching her touch her stomach the way pregnant women do. I moved to the guest room, he said. Told her I had a project keeping me up late. She didn't ask twice. I wanted to say something. That I was sorry. That I understood. But sorry felt like a word from someone else's vocabulary, and understanding was a door we'd both walked through alone. Wednesday, I said. 7:45. 7:45. I was ready. Everything in place. Evidence ally timing script. For the first time in 10 years, I was the one holding the cards. Then Lily came home from school. 3 days before the dinner. I was in the kitchen going over the seating chart one more time when the front door banged open and Lily ran in shoes untied, backpack dragging, holding a shopping bag over her head like a trophy. Mommy, Daddy says we're doing something special for your anniversary. Behind her, Garrett. Lean in the doorway, car keys in hand, that smile. The one that worked on everyone. Surprise, babe. I took Lily to Target after school. She picked it out herself. Lily pulled a dress from the bag and held it up. White cotton with small blue flowers. A tag still hanging from the collar. $40. The most expensive thing in her closet. Can I wear it to the dinner, please? Daddy said. It's a fancy dinner. She spun. The dress fanned out around her knees. She laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from the stomach. The kind that doesn't know yet that the world can break promises. Garrett caught my eye and winked. Family dinner. Thought we'd make it a real celebration. I looked at my daughter spinning in her new dress, and my husband leaning in the doorway, and the seating chart on the counter behind me face down, and the distance between those two things was 7 years of Lily's life. Her bedroom with the star projector, her unicorn pillows, the way she said love you to the moon every night before sleep, all of it sitting on a fault line I was about to crack open. Lily stopped spinning. Mommy, do you like it? I love it, baby. My voice held. You look beautiful. She ran to her room to try it on again. Garrett followed her down the hall, and I stood in the kitchen with my hand on the counter, and my plan on the other side of it, and a thought I could not stop. If I did this at the dinner in front of Lily's father, in front of people Lily called uncle and auntie, I would win, and Lily would lose. Not the marriage. The marriage was already dead. But the way she remembered her parents. The story she'd carry. Whether her first real memory of family falling apart, Was her mother standing in a restaurant reading her father's emails to a silent room? I picked up my phone. Called Darla. She answered on the first ring the way she always did now. I can't bring Lily to the dinner. Okay. If Garrett tries to use this against me in custody, if he says I staged a public scene, then your scene better be bulletproof. Calm. Factual. No screaming, no crying, no throwing things. You lay the evidence on the table the way you lay out surgical instruments. Neat. Clean. Let the facts do the cutting. I stared out the kitchen window. The neighbor's maple was turning red at the edges. 3 days. Tyler and Jordan can watch Lily, I said. Jordan will say yes. Good. And I need you at the hotel. Not at the dinner. Phone on. If something goes wrong, you pick up Lily and you drive. Darla was quiet. I heard her breathing. Steady like Logan's. Like mine had become. 3 people holding the same silence for different reasons. You're sure, she said. I thought about the laundry room, the flannel shirt, the smell of vanilla that didn't belong to me. I thought about the email draft, the word dissolution, the phrase witnesses to her reaction. I thought about Lily spinning in a $40 dress laughing. I'm sure. The 10th plate part 3. Jordan texted me the next morning, 2 days before the dinner. Can we grab coffee, just us? With a smiley face that didn't match the weight of the question. We met at Stumptown on Division. Jordan arrived first, which she never did. She had a latte in front of her she hadn't touched and a way of sitting that made her look smaller than she was. Shoulders pulled in, elbows close like she was trying to take up less room in her own life. Thanks for coming, she said. I sat down, ordered a drip. The barista had a septum ring and a tattoo of a fern on her wrist, and no idea that 2 women at the corner table were about to have a conversation that would ruin her background music. Jordan wrapped both hands around her cup. Britt, I need to tell you something. I should have told you a long time ago, and I didn't, and that's on me. I waited. I already knew what was coming the way. You know the diagnosis before the doctor finishes the sentence. 6 months ago, Tyler and I were at Muka Osteria. Date night. We were at a booth in the back and I saw Garrett at a table near the window. She paused, took a breath that went nowhere. He was with a woman. Not a group. Just them. And she was holding his hand. Under the table, but I saw it. Her fingers on his wrist. What did she look like, blonde? Pretty. Younger than us. Jordan's eyes dropped to her cup. I told Tyler when we got home. He said not to get involved. He said it could be a client that I was reading into it, that men have business dinners all the time. And I wanted to believe that. I really did. She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but nothing fell. Jordan was good at that. Holding everything right at the edge. I'm so sorry, Britt. I could have been angry. 6 months. 6 months she sat on this while I folded laundry and drove carpool and made Garrett's lunches. 6 months, Tyler told her to look the other way because men have business dinners and it wasn't their problem, and rocking the boat would make things awkward at game nights. But what I saw in Jordan's face wasn't cruelty. It was the same thing I'd seen in my own mirror for a decade. Fear. The fear of saying the true thing out loud and watching what it breaks. Thank you for telling me, I said. Jordan leaned forward. Britt, listen. Tyler says Garrett is planning something really special for the dinner. Something big. Maybe he's trying to make things right. Maybe you should just let the dinner be nice. There it was. She hadn't come to help me. She'd come to contain me. Tyler had sent her. Or Tyler had agreed when she said she felt guilty, and they'd decided together that the best thing was to warn Brittany to be good, to be calm, to not make a scene, to let the nice dinner stay nice. Protect the group. Protect the peace. Protect the Saturday game nights and the couples' vacations and the Christmas cards, with all 4 families smiling in matching sweaters. Jordan was an enabler. Not because she was bad, because she was scared. The same way I'd been scared on that laundry room floor holding a shirt that smelled like another woman and choosing to put it back in the basket. I appreciate you telling me, I said again. And I meant it. Not the advice. The admission. Because Jordan had just confirmed what I needed to know. The friends at that table would side with comfort, not with truth. When the moment came, I would be standing alone. I drove home in traffic on Powell and thought about Jordan's face. That careful, wet-eyed, halfway courage. She wanted to be good. She just didn't want it to cost anything. The night before the dinner, I read Lily her bedtime story. Our routine. Every night the same. She picked the book I did, the voices she asked for one more page 3 times, and I always gave her 2. The star projector turned on her ceiling. Her unicorn pillows piled behind her. The nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. Her room smelled like strawberry shampoo and the fabric softener I put in her sheets because she said it made them cloudy. She was half asleep when she said it. Eyes closed, voice already going soft around the edges. "Mommy, will Daddy always live here?" My hand stopped on the page. "Why do you ask that, baby?" "Because Sophie's daddy doesn't live with her anymore. Sophie says he moved to an apartment. She said it has a pool, but she only goes on Wednesdays." Lily's eyes opened. Brown like Garrett's. "Will Daddy move to an apartment?" I wanted to say no. The word was right there, easy, familiar. "No, baby. Never. Daddy will always be here." The same lie I told myself every time Garrett came home late, every time his phone was face down on the counter, every time he said, "Not now." Britt and I swallowed it like medicine. I couldn't say it. For the first time in 7 years of motherhood, I could not lie to my daughter. "I love you to the moon," I whispered. "No matter what." "To the moon," she said, and closed her eyes. I stayed. I sat on the edge of her bed and listened to her breathing, slow and deepen, her small chest rising and falling under the cotton blanket with the foxes on it. The star projector turned slow circles on the ceiling. Fake constellations. Little dots of light that meant nothing and meant everything. When I stood up, my legs ached. I walked to the doorway and looked back. My daughter in her bed. Her stuffed elephant under one arm. Her face soft and open the way only sleeping children's faces can be. And I knew with a certainty that sat in my chest like a stone that the plan could kill me in custody. Garrett's email had said it. Witnesses to her reaction. If I brought a stranger to the dinner, if I read his emails out loud, if I did anything that any of those friends could later describe as aggressive, unhinged, cruel, Garrett would paint me as the woman who destroyed a family dinner for revenge. He'd have 8 witnesses. I'd have the truth, but truth doesn't always win in family court. I'd seen it. Darla had lived it. And Lily. If Garrett got more custody time, Lily would be spending those extra hours with Sienna, eating dinners Sienna cooked, sleeping in a room Sienna decorated, calling Sienna by whatever name Garrett told her to use. I could lose the one thing that mattered. I walked to the laundry room, 1:30 in the morning. The house was dark except for the stove light Garrett always left on because he was afraid of stubbing his toe. His snoring came down the hallway through the open bedroom door past Lily's room, steady and even. The snoring of a man who was planning to leave his wife in 2 days and slept like he'd earned the rest. I sat on the floor. Same spot. Same linoleum cold through my joggers. Same shelf with the lavender detergent cap off, the smell thick and sweet. The washing machine was off. The house was quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the pipes clicking in the walls, the old house sounds that Garrett promised to fix and never did. His flannel was in the basket. I picked it up. The vanilla was gone now, washed out weeks ago, but my hands remembered. The weight of the fabric, the way I'd folded it along the same creases for 10 years, collar to hem, sleeves tucked every edge straight. I could fold Garrett's shirts in the dark. I could fold them asleep. I had folded so many of his shirts that my fingers knew the pattern the way a pianist knows scales, automatic, thoughtless. The muscle memory of a woman who had turned service into identity and called it love. I held the flannel in my lap and thought, who am I without this? Not without Garrett. Without this. The folding. The lunch packing. The shift swapping so he could have his Thursday night poker. The birthday cakes made from scratch because Lily's school said store-bought was fine, but I wanted to be the mom who didn't do fine, who did more, who did the most. 22. I was 22 when I canceled the nurse supervisor interview at Street. Luke's in Boise. Garrett had gotten the offer in Portland. He was so excited. He picked me up and swung me around the kitchen of our apartment, the apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played guitar at midnight, and he said, "Babe, this is our future. I'll make it up to you." I believed him. I packed the boxes. 25. The OHSU Pediatric Surgery Fellowship. I had the application half finished on our desktop computer. Lily was 3 months old, and I was back at work pumping in the break room, running on 4 hours of sleep, and still I wanted it. That fellowship was mine. My thing. The one piece of my career that wasn't about keeping someone else alive, but about becoming the best version of what I could be. Garrett came home and saw the application on the screen and said, "Babe, you don't need that stress right now. We've got Lily. We've got each other. That's enough." And I closed the tab. Because he was right. Because it was enough. Because I was afraid that wanting more made me selfish, made me like my mother, made me the woman who walks away. My mother left when I was 9. No fight. No warning. One Tuesday morning, her closet was empty. Her toothbrush gone from the holder. Dad standing in the kitchen making my lunch like nothing was different except his hands were shaking, and the peanut butter was on the wrong side of the bread. He said Mom needed to go find herself. I was 9 years old, and I understood two things: that finding yourself meant leaving your daughter behind, and that I would die before I became that woman. 23 years later, sitting on a cold laundry room floor at 1:30 in the morning, I saw it. I hadn't become my mother. I'd become her mirror image. She left to find herself. I stayed until there was no self left to find. Different doors, same empty room. The pipes clicked in the wall. Garrett's snoring paused 3 seconds, then started again. My phone vibrated on the floor beside me. Darla, 1:32 a.m. You up? I didn't answer. I set the phone face down. I held the flannel shirt in both fists and I squeezed. The fabric bunched between my knuckles, wrinkled, ruined. 10 years of perfect creases gone. I held it there until my hands ached. Then I let go, opened my fingers, let the fabric fall. The plan didn't change. The dinner was still happening. Logan was still coming. But something inside the plan had shifted the way a bone resets after a break. Same structure, different angle. I wasn't doing this to hurt Garrett. I was done needing Garrett to hurt. What I needed, what I had always needed and never once allowed myself to say, was to know that I could stand in a room full of people who wanted me to be quiet and speak anyway. Not scream, not cry, not throw things or read emails like a woman on fire. Just say what was true in a voice that was mine and walk out with my back straight. Because one day, maybe 10 years from now, Lily would ask me. She'd be 17 or 22, the age I was when I gave up the interview, and she'd ask what I did when I found out. And the answer could not be, I folded his shirts. The answer had to be, I told the truth and then I left. I stood up. My knees cracked against the linoleum. I picked up the flannel, held it over the open washing machine for a moment, then dropped it in. Closed the lid. Pressed the button. The cycle started. Water rushed in. The drum began to turn. The last load I would ever do for Garrett Cole. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My face was drawn skin pale under the fluorescent light, the bruise-colored circles under my eyes, that 12-hour shifts paint there and sleep can never quite erase. I looked tired. I looked older than 32. But my eyes were clear. I opened the medicine cabinet and took out a bottle of ibuprofen, shook 2 into my palm, swallowed them dry. Then I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and went to the guest room. I didn't go back to Garrett's bed. There was a quilt on the guest bed that Darla had given me years ago, patchwork heavy, smelling like the cedar chest it lived in. I pulled it over my shoulders and lay in the dark and listened to the washing machine run its final cycle. Tomorrow night. 10 chairs. 1 truth. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I slept. The 10th plate, part 4. I woke up in the guest room at 6 and lay still for a full minute looking at the ceiling. The quilt smelled like cedar. The washing machine had finished sometime in the night. From down the hall, I could hear Garrett's alarm going off, the default iPhone chime he'd never bothered to change, and then his feet on the floor, the bathroom door, the shower. Saturday morning. He had a haircut at 9 and a plan to destroy our marriage at 8 tonight, and no idea that his wife had already built the stage. I got out of bed and made Lily pancakes. Blueberry, her favorite. She came down in pajamas with her stuffed elephant under one arm, and her new dress draped over the other, not wanting to wrinkle it. She ate 3 pancakes and asked if she could bring the elephant to the dinner. You're going to Jordan and Tyler's tonight, I said. Remember, Auntie Jordan is doing movie night. But I want to wear my dress. Wear it to Jordan's. Show everyone how pretty you look. She considered this, then nodded, satisfied. 7 years old, and the logic of beauty was already enough to rearrange her plans. Garrett came downstairs in a towel, kissed Lily's head, poured coffee. He leaned against the counter and scrolled his phone, one thumb working, and did not look at me. I'll pick up the wine on the way, he said. Reservations at 7. You good to drive Lily to Tyler's by 6? I'm good. He nodded. Took his coffee upstairs. I listened to his footsteps above me, the creak of the closet door, the sound of a man choosing a shirt for the night he planned to begin leaving his wife. I washed the pancake pan and the mixing bowl, and dried my hands on the towel that hung by the sink, and thought about nothing at all. At 4 o'clock, I dropped Lily at Tyler and Jordan's. Jordan answered the door with a smile that tried too hard. She hugged. Lily told her the popcorn was already in the microwave, glanced at me over Lily's head with a look that said, "Please don't do anything stupid tonight." I kissed my daughter's forehead and told her I loved her to the moon, and she said to the moon back, already turning toward the TV, the elephant tucked under her arm. I drove home, showered, stood in front of the closet. I chose the black dress. Not the one I wore to Garrett's company Christmas parties. The one he picked out, the one that was tight in the places he wanted, and short enough to make his friends look twice. I chose the other one. The one I bought myself 2 years ago for a hospital fundraiser. Simple. Fitted. The kind of dress a woman wears when she's not performing for anyone. I left my hair down. No ponytail. No scrubs. No gold studs Garrett gave me for our 5th anniversary. I put in small silver earrings I'd had since college, before Garrett, before Portland, before any of this. My wedding ring sat on the bathroom counter. I'd taken it off while washing my hands and not put it back. I looked at it. A thin gold band. Garrett bought it when we were 22, and broke and happy. It cost $300 and I had never wanted a bigger one, because I thought the smallness of the ring was proof that what we had was real, that it didn't need to be expensive to mean something. I left it on the counter. My finger felt strange without it. Lighter. The skin underneath was paler than the rest of my hand. A white stripe where 10 years had blocked the sun. I rubbed it with my thumb. It would tan eventually. I'd maybe called Logan at 6:15. Arrive at 7:45. Not before. Let him get comfortable. Copy. I called Darla. Phone on. Lily's at Jordan's. If I call and say the word pancakes, come get her. Pancakes. Got it. A pause. Britt. Yeah. You're going to be fine. I didn't say anything. Fine was a word I'd been using for 10 years and it had never once been true. I drove to Arden. The restaurant was on a corner in the Pearl District, exposed brick-tall windows, the kind of place that put herbs in the cocktails and charged $42 for a steak. Garrett loved it. He said it made him feel like he'd arrived, which was the most honest thing he'd ever said because Garrett was always performing for an audience he couldn't name. I parked and sat in the car for 3 minutes. Checked my face in the visor mirror. Steady hands. Dry eyes. The woman in the mirror looked like someone I hadn't met in a long time. Thinner around the mouth than I remembered. More lines at the corners of her eyes. But present. Not the wife who folded and folded and folded. Someone else. The private dining room was already set when I walked in. 10 chairs around a long table, candles lit, napkins folded into birds, a prix-fixie menu on each plate. The rosemary smell from the kitchen hit me, and I was back in the flash forward, back in the moment I'd rehearsed so many times it had started to feel like a memory. Tyler and Jordan were not there. Jordan was watching Lily. Tyler had texted Garrett an excuse. So the table was 8, not 10. Amber and Sean arrived first, then Ian and Priya, then Sienna, alone in a silk blouse, and that silver bracelet catching the light. Garrett came last, which was his style. He walked in with a bottle of wine that cost more than our grocery bill, and a smile that could sell ice in January. He kissed my cheek. His lips were cool. His cologne was the one I knew, the one that was actually his, and for 1/2 second I missed the man I thought he was. You look incredible, he said. He said it loud enough for the table to hear. Thank you. He sat across from me. The empty chair was to my left. He didn't ask about it. He was already pouring wine, already talking, already filling the room with the version of himself that everyone loved. At 7:38, he stood and raised his glass. 10 years. I want to say I don't deserve this woman, but you all already know that. Laughter. Brittany runs our home, raises our daughter, works 12-hour shifts, and still has the patience to put up with me. He looked at me and his eyes were warm, and I hated him for that warmth because it was real in its way. Garrett loved me the way you love a house. Comfortably, possessively, without ever asking the house what it wanted. To Brittany, glasses up. Sienna's too. Her bracelet slid down her wrist as she lifted her glass. I drank. The wine tasted like money and oak, and the end of something. 7:45. The door opened. Logan walked in. Corduroy jacket, dark glasses, hands at his sides, not in his pockets. He'd made a decision about his hands. He wanted them visible. Free. Garrett looked up. The toast glow still on his face. Logan, hey buddy. I thought you had the Henderson. I invited him, I said. Garrett's eyes moved from Logan to me. The grin adjusted, got wider. The compensating smile, the one that meant his brain was recalculating but his face hadn't caught up. So, my wife brings a mystery guest to our anniversary dinner. He spread his hands, played to the table. Should I be worried? Sean laughed. Amber almost did, then stopped. Logan pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't shake Garrett's hand. His eyes tracked down the table, past the candles, past the folded birds, past Amber's nervous smile, and found Sienna. She was holding her fork over a piece of bread. Her hand stopped. I turned to her. I used the voice The one from the hospital. Clear calm pitched for a room where everything is going wrong, and the only thing holding it together is the person who sounds like nothing is. Relax. He's just here to meet his wife's boyfriend. The table went silent. Not restaurant silent. Vacuum silent. The kind where you hear the wax running down the candle. Logan spoke first. He didn't look at Garrett. He looked at the center of the table at a spot between the breadbasket and the wine, and spoke the way he probably spoke at board meetings. Measured, numbered, facts first. I've reviewed the company credit card statements for the past 3 fiscal years. There are 114 charges flagged as client entertainment that correspond to no documented client meetings. There is a lease for a 2-bedroom apartment on Southeast Hawthorne, co-signed by Garrett Cole and Sienna Marsh, paid through the business operating account at $1,800 per month for 31 months. Total discretionary expenditure $127,000. He paused. Let the number sit. I'd like to discuss that, Garrett. Garrett's smile was dead. Not dying. Dead. What replaced it was something I had never seen on his face before, and I had studied that face for a decade. It was the look of a man who has just realized that the room he built, the room he filled with people who admired him, has become a cage, and every exit has a lock. Sienna's fork hit her plate. That sound again, porcelain and metal. A bright little chime like a bell at the end of something. I turned to her. That bracelet, I said. Markham Jewelers. December 14th. $1,200. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I remember, because it showed up on our joint credit card statement. My money. On your wrist. Her hand went to the bracelet. Reflex. The way you touch a wound before you know you're bleeding. Then her hand fell to her lap and she stared at the table and said nothing. Logan reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. He opened a photograph and placed the phone face up in the center of the table next to the breadbasket. Bend, Oregon. Company retreat. 3 years ago. His voice hadn't changed. Not louder, not softer. The same flat tone. That's my wife's hand on your thigh, Garrett. In your own Google Photos album. The one we share for company events. Garrett stood up. The chair scraped back hard. His hands went flat on the table the way a man braces himself before a fight, and he looked at me with the face underneath the face, the one I'd caught a glimpse of 3 weeks ago in this same room. No charm, no warmth, no crinkled eyes. You planned this. You went through my laptop, my email, my personal files. He turned to the table, opened his arms. Appeal to audience. This is what she does. She goes through my things. She's paranoid. She needs help. You guys know me. Sean looked at his plate. Ian pulled his napkin into his lap like it was the most important task in the world. Priya studied her wine. And Amber, who had been my friend for 6 years, who had held my hand when Lily was born, pressed her lips together and said nothing. Not one of them looked at me. Not one of them said, Garrett, is it true? But then there was a hand, a small motion from my right. Logan, who owed me nothing, who was living through his own apocalypse 2 chairs away, reached over and pushed the phone 1 inch closer to Garrett. 1 inch. The photograph glowing on the screen between them. The quietest possible act of defiance. I looked around the table. 6 years of dinner parties, birthday brunches, group texts, New Year's toasts. These people knew my daughter's name. They'd been to my house. And right now, every one of them was waiting for me to scream or cry or give Garrett exactly what he needed. A scene. Evidence of instability. Something he could take to David Keene's office on Monday morning and file. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I folded my napkin, straightened the crease, set it on the table. I didn't go through your personal files, Garrett. You left your email open on our shared laptop, the one you asked me to use to build your anniversary slideshow. I let that land. September 14th. You wrote to David Keene, your divorce attorney. You wrote, I'd like to discuss initiating separation at a planned family event to minimize drama and ensure witnesses to her reaction. I paused. The room was so quiet I could hear Amber breathing through her nose. You planned this dinner to leave me, in front of our friends, with a custody strategy already drafted. You wanted witnesses to my breakdown. I looked at him. You just didn't plan for me to read it first. Garrett's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hands were still flat on the table, but his fingers had curled knuckles going white against the wood. He turned to Sienna. Instinct. Looking for the ally, the other half of the lie, the person who was supposed to be on his side. Sienna was staring at Logan. Logan was staring back. The distance between their eyes was the width of the table and the length of a marriage. and neither of them blinked. Garrett. Sienna's voice cracked on the second syllable. The first time I'd heard her sound like anything other than polished. Tell them it's not what it looks like. Garrett said nothing. Garrett. Tell them. He stood there, mouth half open, hands on the table, and he said nothing because anything he said would make it worse. His lawyer had trained him well. Silence was the only play. But silence in a room full of people who just heard the numbers, who just saw the photo, who just listened to his own words, read back to him. Silence in that room did not sound like strategy. It sounded like guilt. Sienna pushed her chair back. She stood, picked up her purse, looked at me for the first time all evening. Not with anger, not with defiance. With the exhausted recognition of a woman who has just understood that the man who promised to leave his wife for her had also been planning his exit from both of them. She and I were not rivals. We were two lines in the same spreadsheet. She walked out. The door closed behind her. The candle nearest the door flickered from the draft. Logan didn't follow. Garrett ran his hand through his hair. The last play. The soft voice. The one he saved for when charm had failed and anger hadn't worked. The confessional. Britt, come on. We can talk about this at home. Not here. Not like this. He lowered his voice. Think about Lily. Think about Lily. The words he'd used every time I questioned a late night, a missed dinner, a Wednesday that smelled like vanilla. Think about Lily. It meant don't look. It meant what you want doesn't matter. It meant stay. I stood up. I picked up the napkin I'd folded and set it on my plate, neat the way I set everything in Garrett's life, neat and pressed and ready for him. Then I took off nothing because there was nothing left to take off. The ring was on the bathroom counter. The marriage was on the table. I have been thinking about Lily, I said. That's exactly why I'm here tonight. So that one day when she asks me what I did, I can tell her I sat at a table, told the truth, and walked out with my back straight. I picked up my purse. I pushed in my chair. And I walked out of the private dining room at Arden through the main restaurant where couples ate steaks and laughed at things that were actually funny, past the host stand and the coat rack and the heavy glass door, and into the parking. A lot where the October air hit my face like cold water and I could finally breathe. My car was in the second row. I got in and closed the door and sat there. I did not start the engine. The restaurant glowed behind me, warm and golden, full of people who would go home tonight and tell someone about what they saw. About the wife who didn't cry. About the husband who couldn't speak. About the stranger who brought a spreadsheet to an anniversary dinner. My phone buzzed. Darla. How did it go? I wanted to say I destroyed him. I wanted to say I won. But the word that came out was smaller and more honest than either of those. I told the truth. Darla was quiet. Then you coming to get Lily? Yeah. Give me 20 minutes. I sat in the car with the engine off and the windows up and the parking lot empty around me. My hands were on the steering wheel. Steady. No shaking. The ring finger on my left hand was bare. The pale stripe, visible even in the dark. I thought about the laundry room. The flannel shirt. 10 years of spin cycles. I thought about my mother's empty closet and my father making lunch with shaking hands and the look on Lily's face when she asked if Daddy would move to an apartment. I thought about Logan's steady voice reading numbers to a silent room, and Sienna walking out and Garrett's mouth opening on nothing. I thought about the interview in Boise, the one I canceled at 22. I pulled out my phone and opened a bookmark I'd saved 4 years ago and never gone back to. The OHSU Pediatric Surgery Fellowship page, updated for next year. Application deadline January 15th. I didn't apply. Not tonight. Tonight was not about applications. Tonight was about the fact that I opened the page at all, that I looked at it, that I allowed myself to want something that had nothing to do with Garrett Cole or laundry or being the best wife in any room. The screen glowed in the dark car. I read the first paragraph twice. Then I closed the phone, started the engine, and drove to pick up my daughter. Lily was asleep on Jordan's couch when I arrived, the elephant tucked under her chin, the blue flower dress wrinkled from a night of movie watching and popcorn. Jordan handed her to me without a word. She didn't ask about the dinner. She didn't need to. My face told her everything, or maybe Tyler had already texted Garrett, or maybe the silence between us was its own kind of sentence. I carried Lily to the car. She was heavy with sleep, her head on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. I buckled her into the back seat and stood there for a moment in Jordan's driveway, with the October wind pulling at my hair and the maple trees dark against a sky full of stars that were real, not projected, not the plastic kind that turned on Lily's ceiling. My phone buzzed one more time. Not Darla. Not Logan. An unknown number. I opened it. It was from a contact I hadn't saved. A short message, 2 sentences. Garrett had forwarded Logan's spreadsheet to David Keene, his lawyer. The divorce was already starting. And this time it was Garrett who was going to need witnesses to his own reaction. I put the phone in my pocket. I got in the car. I adjusted the rearview mirror, and in it I could see Lily's face soft and slack with sleep, her lips slightly parted, her fingers curled around the elephant's ear. I drove us home. Not to the townhouse. To Darla's hotel. To the quilt that smelled like cedar, and the sister who answered on the first ring. To a room that was not mine, but that was for tonight enough. The road was quiet. The city thinned out past Selwood, and the streetlights got farther apart, and somewhere behind me in a restaurant in the Pearl District, a man was sitting at a table set for 10, with nobody left to perform for. I turned up the heat. Lily shifted in her sleep. And I drove. 3 spin-off angles built from the same universe, each designed to deepen the main story's emotional impact, embed a distinct life lesson through action, and end with a moment that pulls the audience into the comments. A section. The main story shows Logan as a weapon. Calm. Spreadsheet ready. Flat voice. But we never see what happened inside his house during those 12 days between Brittany's call and the dinner. This spin-off opens on the Thursday. Logan hangs up the phone with Brittany. He's standing in the Cole and Marsh office, the door closed, looking at the framed photo on his desk, and him and Sienna on their wedding day 6 years ago, her hand on his chest, both of them laughing at something the photographer said. He drives home. Sienna is making pasta. She asks how his day was. He says fine. She says she might go to that anniversary dinner, since he has the Henderson client thing, if that's okay. He says sure. She touches his arm as she passes, and he does not flinch, and that single act of control costs him more than any spreadsheet he will ever build. The story follows Logan through 12 days of living inside a lie, while he builds the evidence against it. Going to work with Garrett every morning, sitting across the conference table, reviewing campaigns together, Garrett clapping him on the back, calling him partner, buddy, brother. And Logan every night opening the company credit card portal in the guest room. He moved into tracing another charge, another lie, another dinner that Garrett billed as client entertainment, while Logan was home eating the pasta his wife made before she drove to Garrett's apartment. The life lesson is embedded in Logan's arc. Grief doesn't always look like breaking down. Sometimes it looks like a man making a spreadsheet at 2 in the morning with his reading glasses on and a glass of water he hasn't touched, turning betrayal into columns and rows because numbers don't lie and numbers don't need you to cry. Sometimes the bravest thing a man does is not confront. It's wait. It's gather. It's show up to a dinner in a corduroy jacket with shaking hands and a voice so steady it scares even him. The ending after the dinner, after the restaurant, Logan drives home alone. Sienna's car is not in the driveway. Her closet, when he opens it, is half empty. She packed while he was at dinner. On the kitchen counter, her wedding ring and a note, "I'm sorry." 3 syllables. 6 years of marriage, reduced to 2 words that answer nothing. Logan picks up the ring, sits on the kitchen floor, and for the first time in 12 days he puts his face in his hands. Not because she left, because he already knew she would. Because the spreadsheet told him that too. Final line delivered directly to the audience. Everybody talks about the wife's pain. Nobody asks the other husband what it costs to hold a spreadsheet steady while your whole life burns. Comment trigger: the audience has spent the entire main story seeing Logan as a supporting character, a tool, a weapon Brittany deployed. This spin-off reframes him as a person. It asks the question women in the audience might not have considered. What about the other betrayed spouse? The one who doesn't get a story? The one who walked into that restaurant knowing he'd lose everything and did it anyway? Because someone called and said, "Are you in?" And he said yes. Before he even knew what the plan was, because yes was the only word left. Audience prompt: have you ever held it together for someone else's fight, knowing your own was already lost? Before you click away, I want to sit with you for a moment. Because Brittany's story isn't really about a dinner party. It's not about a spreadsheet or a bracelet or a fork hitting a plate. It's about the woman on the laundry room floor who realized she had folded someone else's shirts for so long that she forgot she had hands of her own. And if you're listening to this, there's a chance you know that floor. Maybe not linoleum. Maybe it's the driver's seat of your car after work, or the bathroom with the door locked and the shower running so nobody hears you. You know the floor. You've sat on it, and you've gotten up the next morning and made breakfast and said, "I'm fine," because that's what you were taught to do. Here's what Brittany learned that you deserve to hear: staying is not the same as strength. Somewhere along the way, someone told you that enduring is brave, that swallowing your anger makes you a good wife, that keeping quiet keeps the family together, that your job is to hold everything in place, even when the person standing next to you is the one pulling it apart. That is not strength. That is disappearing. And you have been disappearing so slowly, so quietly, that you didn't notice until you tried to find yourself and there was nothing there but a routine and a grocery list and a closet full of someone else's priorities. You don't have to burn your life down to change it. Brittany didn't throw a glass. She didn't scream. She sat at a table and said what was true and walked out. The truth delivered calmly in your own voice, in front of people who wanted you to be quiet. That's the most dangerous thing a woman can do. Not because it's loud, because it's clear. And if you're the woman who found the receipts and put them back in the pocket and finished the laundry, you're not stupid. You were surviving. You were keeping the ceiling from caving in on your kids while you figured out whether the floor could hold. But surviving and living are not the same thing, and at some point, you have to choose which one you're doing. Check your bank statements. Not because you think he's cheating, because you should know where your money goes. Know what's in the joint account. Know what's in his name and what's in yours. Know whether the house you clean every week has your name on the deed. These aren't acts of suspicion. They're acts of self-respect. You wouldn't drive a car without knowing where the brakes are. Don't live a life without knowing where the exits are. And if you have a sister, call her. Not to report a crisis. Just to say, how are you really, and wait for the real answer, the one that comes after the pause, the one she's been carrying for months because nobody asked twice. So tell me, have you ever folded someone else's shirt at midnight and wondered when you stopped folding your own? Have you ever known something was wrong and chosen not to look, not because you were afraid of the answer, but because you were afraid of what you'd have to do once you had it? Have you ever stayed in a room where you were invisible and called it home? You can say it here. Nobody's going to tell you to calm down. Nobody's going to say you're overreacting. This is your floor. And whenever you're ready, you can stand up.